Hello and welcome to Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, Jon Scholes. Well, welcome everybody to our latest episode. I sit down with Jeremy Price, who is the co-owner and co-founder, along with Renee Erickson, of Sea Creatures, the terrific Seattle restaurant group behind great places like Deep Dive in downtown Seattle under the Spheres there, and Wilmot's Ghost, and many others throughout our city, including the Walrus and the Carpenter and Bateau, and Lioness, which just opened up on Finney Ridge. At Sea Creatures, Jeremy is responsible for interior design and the branding efforts. He aspires to create warm, welcoming, and unique spaces for guests to use and enjoy. His designs have been featured in Architectural Digest and GQ and Esquire and Food and Wine, among other publications. Jeremy was raised in Woodinville, Washington, graduated from Western Washington University. He lives in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood with his partner Meredith and his pup Lucy. And Jeremy and I discuss how he got into the restaurant industry, from making cabinets in one of Renee Erickson's restaurants to becoming a co-owner and co-founder of the restaurant group Sea Creatures. It's a great story of his entry into this industry. We discuss the 3 new restaurants that Sea Creatures has planned for the Pioneer Square neighborhood in Seattle, which will be open just about a year from now in the spring of 2025. We discuss the changing nature of the restaurant industry, how Jeremy and Renee develop concepts for restaurants, his perfect Saturday in Seattle, and where Jeremy is eating when he's not eating at the great restaurants in the Sea Creatures group. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jeremy Price, the co-founder and co-owner of Sea Creatures. Well, thanks, Jeremy, for making time for this, for coming on Seattle City Makers.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, you all have a lot going on and more to come, I know, with the announcement of 3 new establishments, I think, if I have that right, in Pioneer Square. And we'll get to that, of course, but thought we'd start with how you got into this work in this industry and working with Renee. And I know just a few bits of the story from your profile from the Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40 a few years back, that you were making cabinets at the Boat Street Cafe.
Yeah. So
and then got into the business.
That's right.
There's some steps in between all that.
Yeah, just a few. So I met Renee originally because I was a weekend busboy at the Boat Street Kitchen. And I did kind of cabinetry, woodworking on the side with my dad, who has the wood shop and kind of all the experience. And when Renee found out that I did some of that work, she hired my dad and I to build a bar for Boat Street Cafe and to build banquettes for Boat Street Cafe. And we got to be friends through that process. And when it was all said and done, I kind of stopped working on the weekends at Boat Street Kitchen and started working in the weeknights for Renee as a bar back and as a busboy. And just, I kind of fell in love with the restaurant industry. I had a day job at a biotech company that was a great job, great benefits and everything, but didn't really kind of speak to me in terms of, just that place in my life where I wasn't surrounded by like people my own age. I was surrounded by people that were, well into their lives, families, houses in the suburbs, all of that. Whereas the restaurant industry was people my age. They were doing cool stuff. They were making art. They were acting. They were dancing. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And fast forward a few years of me kind of telling Renee all the time, like, hey, if you ever do something else, I would love to be a part of it. She was solicited by our other business partner, Chad Dale, to do a project in Ballard. At the time, she was still cooking at Boat Street and didn't feel like she could split her time. And so it's like, hey, Jeremy, if you're serious about this, I'd love your help on this oyster bar that I want to do. And that became the Walrus and Carpenter. And we've been partners, the 3 of us, ever since, going on 14 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were doing the cabinet making on the side. You had a job in the biotech industry, and you left that to essentially bus tables.
Totally. I didn't leave my day job until we opened Walrus. So I was doing that kind of throughout this. And the working in restaurants was just sort of a side hustle. I wanted to be able to buy my own place and do all that stuff. So I was working a lot. When I look back at that time in my life, I don't know really how I did it because I just worked a ton. But yeah, my passion now and then was for design. So the kind of my entry into all this was the cabinet making. I had been fitting in some prereqs to be able to apply for grad school to go get my degree in architecture. And that's also something I was like, oh man, well, if we do this oyster bar and I get to design that, like never mind grad school. Like I'm just gonna dive in and do this thing. So I got to design Walrus and Carpenter with Renee, and that was awesome. And since then, I designed a restaurant or two a year for the last decade and a half, and it's been really cool. And I do side projects now too. Like
you're still making cabinets?
No, I'm not. No, it's been a long time. So my dad and mom retired in 2014 and moved out of state, and the wood shop went with them. Yeah, so it's been a long time since I've done any of that, but yeah, still doing the design stuff for restaurants, and then more recently I did a gym. I've done some people's kitchens. So yeah, lots of little projects. Still side hustles. Always with the side hustles.
Love Walrus and the Carpenter was there not too long ago, and love that space and design.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really fun.
It's a great spot with great food and service too.
Yeah, awesome.
And drink.
Yeah, I'm glad you had fun.
So that's quite the journey into one of Seattle's great food establishments and food enterprises.
Yeah.
Were you a big food guy growing up? And
No, not at all. We didn't have a ton of money growing up, and so we didn't go out to eat hardly ever. Renee still teases me because first few times I went to Boat Street Cafe, I was like really intimidated by the menu, like lots of words I didn't understand, lots of ingredients I didn't understand.
Did you do the thing where you just like point to order so you don't have to say
basically
it?
It's like I think I know what that is. Like
I'll have that.
I'll have exactly 100%. And of course, like so it's really like I think my friendship with Renee and through kind of all the other people I've met in the restaurant industry that's kind of horizon is like really expanded for me, and now I feel really comfortable in restaurants all over the place. But yeah,
do you consider yourself a foodie?
I don't know. I don't think I like the term foodie.
Yeah, what makes a foodie? Do you, is there a common in the industry? Is there?
Knows. I think, and I think it's also like kind of a pejorative, right? Like no one uses that as like a cool thing. Yeah, exactly. So I know I like great food, and sometimes that's like complicated niche kind of things that are delicious, and sometimes it's really simple homey stuff. And so like anyone else, I like food. I like lots of different kinds of food. Maybe that makes me a foodie. I don't know, but
has your palate expanded since?
100%. Like we never ate seafood growing up. I didn't have my first oyster, for example, until I was in high school. There was just so much we didn't eat. My dad is a real meat and potatoes kind of person to an extreme. Like, and so our house, there just was not a lot of choices. And so all that came a lot later in life for me. And I'm glad it did, because it's now one of my favorite things. Yeah.
And through your time with Renee, you all acquired Josh Henderson's enterprise, a number of his restaurants, Westward and Great State Burger and others. What were some of the challenges of integrating those into the operation, and how do you think about the concepts and the culture that existed and the way they were run relative to what you already had in place with Renee, and how much of it to continue as is versus making your own mark on what was already there?
Yeah, it was a really challenging kind of project for us. I think that they were, Joss ran those restaurants really well. They were profitable. He just didn't run them how we would run them. So not necessarily like a value judgment there, just, you want to do things your way. And so, us wanting to do things our way, we kind of met, some bumps along the road to kind of, bring the new things into our way of doing things. We remodeled all of them. We changed the menus on all of them. Did our best to keep staff, but even that, I think there was challenges with that. Just how things were not how they were going to be. I think we are a little more buttoned up, I think, than Josh in how we do things, and that wasn't always everyone's favorite. So, I'm happy that we did it, but it was definitely a challenging process.
Did you, at that time, were you looking to do expansions and add to?
Not necessarily. That all kind of came about because we have a partner in common. So Chad Dale, who's partners with Renee and I, was also partners with Josh and another fellow named Ira in Huxley Wallace. And they kind of got to a place with Josh where they had wanted to part ways. Chad and Ira aren't restaurant people, didn't really know how they would continue to run these restaurant businesses without some restaurant people. And so Chad had come to Renee and I about like, hey, can we make something work here? And obviously we were really excited about Westward being right on the lake and, excited about what became Bistro Shirley being right on the Burke Gilman Trail there. And so he did convince us, but it wasn't something that we were seeking to do. Yeah.
What's changed for you all with the operations you had pre-COVID that you reopened and have today? Are they running and oriented in ways in which they were pre-COVID, or have you had to make lots of changes to the operating model and the offerings? I mean, I've been in a number of them, but kind of in your own words, how have you had to pivot or not?
Yeah, I would say there was a ton of pivoting. Like it was like the kind of the buzzword of the time. I felt like we were doing something new every week.
That word.
Yeah, no, for sure. With takeout, which is not something we did a lot of, and to go cocktails and to go everything, and retail, which was not a big part of what we did. And so we went through a period where we were doing lots of these new things. I would say now, for the most part, we're kind of back to where we were in terms of what the business model is, how we run things, and how we're organized. We're staffed a little leaner than we used to be. I'd say we're more mindful of product costs than we used to be. I don't know if that's so much pandemic related. Certainly it's an outcome of the pandemic and inflation being where it is and labor costing what it does now. But for the most part, the model of being a table service restaurant kind of group is kind of back. Maybe the one exception is at the Whale Winds, where we do still have our larder, and we do a lot of home goods in there, candles and soaps and, kitchen utensils and plates and dishware and stuff. And that's actually really fun. I think we'll keep doing that just because it's something we enjoy, but for the most part, we've kind of gone back away from, the to-go and all that stuff. It was something that for us always felt like, us meeting the times, but not necessarily where our heart was,
More of our Seattle City Maker conversation, but first, this from Lease Crutcher Lewis. Lease Crutcher Lewis is the oldest locally owned general contractor in the Pacific Northwest. Its projects span the commercial, corporate tenant improvement, healthcare, life sciences, and education markets, and includes some of the most iconic and innovative buildings in the region. As a 100% employee-owned company, Lewis is proud of its 138-year history delivering the projects that improve our communities. And now back to our conversation. Do you think the restaurant business model is going to need to continue to evolve? I mean, we see more counter service now to deal with sort of labor costs and the service charges, obviously, and people sort of playing around with different numbers on that, and food costs rising. Like, does it have to keep evolving in order to remain viable?
Yeah, I think it does. I think we're in a, I don't know how other operators are doing, but I think we're finding that we're kind of at a place where we, we're starting to get pushback from customers on pricing, while at the same time our costs are climbing in terms of, what we pay for food and what we pay in labor. We're about to do another big jump in labor here next year when it goes to $20 an hour. I think right now it's $16.75, so it's a hike. We're I guess the kind of in the middle of those competing forces. The guests are feeling like, whoa, I don't know if I can continue to eat out as much as I was if the prices are where they are now. And then us being like, well, I don't know if we're going to stay in business if we don't raise prices, given what's happening with labor and what's happening with food costs. I don't know if we know what the answer is. I think we're trying to find efficiencies, do what we're doing, but try to do it in a smarter way. Like I said, our heart wasn't so much in counter or in to go. One of the reasons we sold Gray State Burger was just because it really wasn't a fit for what we love. We're still doing general purpose donuts, which is counter. But I'd say really where our passion is, what like gets us excited is to, have more of a connection with guests and to, serve them and have this kind of hospitality moment of, that table service and kind of helping someone through their experience with us. That's what we want to keep doing. I think we just, as operators, are going to have to keep finding ways to do that more and more efficiently so we can hopefully not price our guests out but still give them the quality and the experience that they've come to, expect from us.
And you also have the catering and event business.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I should say we had a great dinner that you all catered in the Amazon Spheres back in early March for, 70 or so people, and it was
awesome.
Delicious.
Yeah. We're really fortunate. We've got a great kind of events coordinator, our director of marketing, Alexa Dowell. She does all that for us with our various chefs, and it's awesome. It's a growing part of the business. It's not, a massive part of the business. It's one we want to continue to expand upon for sure. And yeah, we love doing it. It can be hard, I think, sometimes to staff them just because it's so, feast or famine with like, there's no events. We went through a real valley with it when Amazon and some of the other corporations kind of started to pull back budget-wise on, what they were spending on these kind of events. And it was like, what do we do with the staff and the labor that we had kind of for this business that's, just evaporated in a over a single memo, so, but when it's good, it's good. And it's, they're fun. The events are fun. I mean, they're hard work, but it's fun for the teams to kind of do something that's, a little bit out of the routine of day-to-day kind of service. So yeah, we hope that continues to grow. It's cool.
I imagine that line of business tracks somewhat with kind of the return to office numbers, and more people back in their office means more corporate events and dinners. And
for sure.
Special events.
Yeah, for sure. The particularly as you referenced the Spheres, I mean, that's so Amazon dependent. But we do a lot of stuff that is private as well. People's retirement parties or, their brunch after their, the wedding the day before, or rehearsal dinners or birthdays, whatever it is. We do a ton of that too. And that's remained pretty steady. Graduation parties, they're smaller events typically. But yeah, the return to office certainly helps restaurants just, in all ways, not just events, but just, having people back in downtown kind of walking by your restaurant and, hey, I might go in there for lunch or I might go in there for dinner. Yeah.
And so you announced recently, I think 3, right? I have that right? 3 new establishments in Pioneer Square. Before we get to whatever you can share on those, and they're not open just yet.
Yeah.
Maybe things you're not able to speak to. But how do you and Renee approach a new restaurant and the design, the concept, the food, the experience? What does that process look like and that conversation look like when the slate is clean, or maybe it's not clean and you're pulling from ideas from the past that you haven't executed on? But what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty iterative. We don't usually start with a complete idea, what I mean? It's a conversational, so it'll be kind of a back and forth of suggesting things until we kind of iron something out that feels like a framework you can start to kind of hang things around. And that comes well before design. Even with the Pioneer Square project you're referencing, it kind of started out as beer and pizza, and it's really evolved pretty significantly since then. Beer and pizza are still a big part of it, but it's a bit more than that now. And so I think you're iterating again and again and again until you kind of have something sculpted into a final product or a vision that that you feel excited about. I think we are always approaching things from the, if this is a place we would want to go to, or if we were traveling in the world and saw this place, like, would we want to go there? Are we excited to bring our friends and family here? Can we not wait to eat here? All those kinds of things. Like, we want to be able to answer all those questions with yes and be excited about it. And so, yeah, you just iterate and iterate and iterate until you get to that place where you can kind of get your arms around it and have that enthusiasm for it.
Is there often a lot of debate and different perspective and tension between you two and your other partner on what's going to work and what's not, both on food design and...
Yeah, we get this a lot. I wish that we had more of an exciting answer. I think the thought is that it would be more conflict, but there's not a ton. I think we each have a pretty good idea of I think what our lane is and what our strengths are, and have a ton of respect for one another. And it's really a much more collaborative process than anything. I mean, certainly there might be disagreements, but there's usually a quick deferral, right? If I know Renee knows a whole lot more about cuisine and restaurants and hospitality than I do, so she has a strong idea about any of that. It's immediately yeah, okay, no, that totally makes sense. You're the expert here. And I think she defers to Chad in the same way when it's, something, kind of business management related. And I think they both have a lot of grace with me when, I'm talking about something around space planning or material choice or whatever. And so I think we have got a really good kind of complementary set of skills that we don't butt heads that often. I won't say that we never do, but it's usually not about conceptualizing a new space. We're pretty, I think, lucky that way. It's usually, I think all three of us would say it's sort of the most fun thing that we get to do is creating these things, maintaining them and operating them year after year. I think that can be, the challenge. But certainly the ideation and the making a new thing together is more exciting than it is, fraught.
I imagine doing that in a neighborhood like Pioneer Square around a bunch of major facilities, sports stadiums, soon to be wonderful waterfront, different traffic patterns than a neighborhood business district like a Finney or a Ballard or Madison Park. I mean, are you driven a little bit more around the neighborhood context in a place like Pioneer Square and having to respond to who's here, when are they here, what are they looking for, versus what you might be able to put in a Fremont or a Finney or a Ballard?
Yeah, totally. That's I think one of the exciting sort of puzzles of the space is how do you create something that's appealing for the 75,000 Seahawks fans that are there for 8 or 9 Sundays a year, that is still relevant to the person that's
more when we make the playoffs.
More when we make the playoffs.
Right?
Yeah,
we'll be positive.
How do you make it appealing for those however many Sundays a year, and still relevant to the people that are coming for Art Walk, still relevant for the tourists coming off cruise ships, still relevant for all the other users, the office workers, everything else. And so I think that's how we going back to the idea of iteration, I think that's how we got to this idea of kind of cutting up the space into a couple different concepts and hopefully landing at a spot where there is something for most everyone, with each one being something we're really excited about, and hopefully there's overlap, with what we're excited about and with what the users of the neighborhood are. But you're totally right. It's a really challenging neighborhood. And it has been, since I was a little kid. My grandma was a watercolorist, and she taught at the community college, and she would come down to Pioneer Square and do watercolors, and she'd always make my dad go with her because she didn't feel super safe, in Occidental Park, and this was in the maybe late 80s. And I don't think it's really changed since then, but it's always the conversation is Pioneer Square is about to happen. It's about to change. And I think it's frustrating for everybody, because it's, I think, the part of the city that has the most beautiful buildings. It has these wonderful, squares and plazas. And I just hope, maybe with the waterfront redevelopment happening, with the Pioneer Square development that's happening, that we can kind of get to the place where the neighborhood starts to kind of live up to that potential a little bit more, to be sort of a, a crown for the city.
Yeah. Certainly been through a lot these last few years. But,
absolutely.
I do think the future is bright for Pioneer Square, and maybe not another neighborhood downtown that's going to benefit more from the waterfront redevelopment than Pioneer Square.
Fingers crossed.
So we've teased it a little bit on these three concepts, and I know there's maybe some things you can share, some things you can't, but what can you share about what's coming and when?
Yeah, well, so I think we are hoping to be open around this time next year. So like May, June 2025. Obviously, it's pretty far away, and I'm sure there'll be delays as there always are. So let's say summer 2025 sometime.
Do any restaurants beat their opening date? Is that a thing?
None, ours don't. I bet people who have their acts more together than us manage it, but we've never. It's always gone over for us. But we're hoping to start construction in October. Kind of the centerpiece of the space is going to be a beer hall like tank bar. So we're super excited about that. As far as we know, it's going to be one of the first tank bars on the West Coast.
Explain a tank bar for those of us not familiar with a tank bar.
It's something that kind of has become popularized in the Czech Republic. But because the beer is able to go on premise through these glycol chilled lines right into a bright tank that you can serve from, you don't have to do kind of this normal pasteurization step that other beers are subjected to, beers that are going into a keg and getting transported off premise, or beers that are getting canned and getting transported off premise. Because it's all temperature controlled on site, you can skip that step, and so you're not ever cooking the beer. And so the beer, the hope is, or the reason why they're popular is that the beer has a little bit more life to it, a little bit more flavor to it. And so we're excited to be part of that. There's a lot of really great breweries in Seattle, and I think this is a way we can maybe add to that conversation without necessarily just repeating it. So that's cool. And so, when I say beer hall, the food there is going to be several different kinds of sausages, sides. Speaking of Seahawks, like we went the other year to see that Tampa Bay game in Munich, and definitely we're at all the beer halls, and just such a fun atmosphere. So I think we're going to approach food a little bit differently. But
that was a research trip.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know I was going to be doing a brewery at the time, but I guess now it's a research trip. But the energy there is just so fun.
You can write it off now as long as you use the knowledge, right?
Yeah. So service style, just kind of the vibes. I'm hoping we can kind of mirror some of that. So that's the bulk of the square footage and the concept. There'll be a pizza by the slice place, which is when we're thinking about your office workers just trying to have a quick lunch, or people just needing a quick bite like before or after a game. Fairly quick service pizza spot. Kind of supplemented with pinballs and some other things just to make the space kind of a little bit fun and interactive. But probably more Neapolitan style pizza, different from what we're doing at Wilman's Ghost, which is kind of the more of a Roman style pizza. So fun to do a different style of pizza. And then the last bit is kind of going to be more of a traditional Sea Creatures restaurant, where you're going to see oysters, you're going to see shellfish, taking inspiration from some of our favorite spots in London and in Europe. Renee has been referencing Noble Rot in London a little bit as one of her favorites, and like, oh, it'd be cool if Seattle had something like that. Maybe we could do our version of that kind of a thing. Like a little bit more of an involved menu, but real small. I think we're going to come in right around 25, 30 seats there. Which is really a comfortable size for us. It's, this kind of size where it doesn't take a ton to fill it up. So if it's a slow night in the neighborhood, it can still be okay for you. Whereas if it was, like a 150 seat restaurant, it'd be grim if it was slow. So those are kind of the three concepts. It's a really cool building. They will have an event space upstairs with a roof deck. So we're hoping to be able to kind of participate in catering and hosting some of the events up there. We hope to have our own little event room in the basement where the brewery equipment will be, kind of a tasting room. So yeah, some different moving pieces, but that's, I think, the high level.
And this is the former FX McCrory space,
that's right.
for those not familiar, but a beautiful building. And
gorgeous.
so you'll occupy most of that first floor, the ground floor?
Yeah, most of us. There's one other restaurant.
Plus the basement.
Tenant, which I don't think is my place to talk about, but there's one other.
One more coming.
Yeah, one more hospitality tenant, which I think people will be really, really excited about when they hear who it's going to be.
Cocktail.
Yes.
Here. Yeah. We are excited. We'll say no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how are you thinking about the design side of all of this? Or is it meant to be sort of tied together, or very distinct experiences?
I think
based on
a little bit of both. I think we want each of them to have their personality and to be kind of unique, but you're going to be able to view into one from another. So they do need to be kind of complementary. I would say more than anything, I think we're trying to be a little bit restrained here, just because the building is so beautiful. We don't really want to do anything that sort of overshadows that. Like, we were just there the other week for a walkthrough, and they have all these concrete columns that are exposed that just have kind of like 3 or 4 layers of paint and who knows what else on them, glue probably, I don't know, that's kind of peeled off, and just the texture of it is just, amazing. Obviously all the brick walls, the steel from all the moment frames they brought in to reinforce the building, for earthquakes and everything else. Just there's already such this like cool material palette that sort of speaks to the age of the building and kind of all the different things that have happened to it before we came along, that we're just trying to kind of, fit in there without, overshadowing it at all, or doing anything that kind of takes away from the coolness that's already there.
Yeah, it's a spectacular.
Yeah.
Spectacular building.
It is really cool. Yeah.
Where are you eating in Seattle right now, or drinking when you're not in your own establishments?
Yeah. Some of my favorites that I've been to recently, so these are newer spots for me anyway. I'm sure some of them are a little bit older. Cricket Club over in Ravenna. This is kind of a elevated Indian, super good. I would encourage everyone to go there. Yeah, check them out. It's awesome. Pancita at Pear, Mexican inspired food, also super delicious. Family friend, one of the cooks that's worked for us for a long time, Justin Legaspi, moved over from Bateau and Boat Bar there to cook with his friend. And we got a chance to visit him, and the food was awesome. I think it's Guamanian, but just kind of general, like Asian Pacific Islander. Everything was awesome. It was a fun space, fun atmosphere. People should check them out too. But honestly, we go to a lot of classics. I can be a little bit of a just like, I want to go to the place I've been to.
Stick with the tried and true.
I want to go to the place, it was fun.
What are some of the tried and trues for you?
Well, like right here when I was parking and walking up here, like you guys are right around the corner from Caviste. I love Caviste.
David, former guest of Seattle City Maker.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. No, love his spot. It's so fun. And just
he's got that rocking 6 nights a week.
It's really great. Similar reasons, Le Pichet, Spinace, Old Salt Bagel. I think they're super fun and doing great stuff. I was really, really sad when Manoline closed. I, hope they do something else. Rupee Bar, of course, is great, of theirs as well. Man, what else? I don't know. Yeah, there's just
a good list.
There's a ton.
Is there a restaurant from a design perspective? You don't have to stick to Seattle, but in your travels that wows you, that like the experience, the design, the architecture, what they've created is worth seeing and experiencing.
Yes.
Above and beyond anything else they might do there, like the food.
Oh man. There certainly are, because I feel like, mostly what we do is we kind of go around seeing the things that we love and then kind of, bringing them home.
Inspiration.
And sort of doing our own version of them. One of the places we were at recently was back in London is Spring. It's just super elegant, refined, understated. One of the places that we always reference is just how you can do kind of a really great, comfortable restaurant and essentially like a loading dock is St. John, also in London. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many. I wish I was better prepared for this question. But yeah, I think, there's almost nowhere we would go where we don't see like something about like, oh, I love that detail.
Yeah.
And like, kind of filed away for, copying later.
Do you think the design matters more now to people's decision on where they dine and going out, and or has it always been part of the experience and expectation of customers?
I don't, I think people are getting to be more kind of sophisticated consumers of design, but I don't know if it's any more important now than it used to be. I think it's pretty contextual. Depending on what kind of experience like people are trying to have, it can be completely okay to go to the amazing strip mall restaurant that, has, plastic chairs. And you can have an amazing experience, and, design is really not why you're there, not important to you. But, then if you're going to like the super swanky, like cocktail lounge that is all dark and moody and everything, all of a sudden design might be really more, more important to you kind of contextually. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's always been important. I don't know if it's any more important now or not. And I think it really is kind of about sort of the experience than it is. I don't know if that was a good answer, but
yeah. Have your own cooking skills evolved since you've been in the industry? Are you you more of a cook now than when you were making cabinets and
100%.
tables?
Yeah, 100%. That's, I think, my wife Meredith and I, it's kind of one of our favorite things to do together is to cook. And that was not true when I was a younger person.
Yeah.
Like, it was like something I would dread. And now it's like, it's something that's fun. I think, part of that is you kind of get better at doing it. So like what you're making is actually something the
payoff of the, of the grind on a Wednesday night is more.
Totally. And part of it too is just like something we can enjoy together. We have our own hobbies, and so that's one where we overlap. So that's pretty fun to have something that we can enjoy together. But yeah, I think just being around the amount of cooking for all these years has definitely given me the confidence to be like, oh, I can maybe do like a version of that's probably not going to be as great when, Chef Bobby, is our executive chef, Bobby Palmquist. It's not going to be as good as when he does it, but I can do something that's probably okay. So yeah, we definitely cook a lot more now. And I say like that really came on hardest during the pandemic, and we've kind of just kept up with it. Yeah.
Well, we close with a couple of standard questions, Jeremy. One is, what was your first job that you took a paycheck for? Did it have anything to do with woodworking?
No, it was McDonald's.
McDonald's. So it had something to do with food.
Yeah. So it like loosely had something to do with food. 15 and a half, first job. McDonald's, Woodinville.
Were you behind the register or back?
I was behind the register.
The fryer.
Yeah. So when you are 15 and a half, you can't be at the fryers or the grills. So I was up front working the register, and then I stayed there until I was like maybe 16 and a half, something like that, and got to the grills and fryers as soon as I could.
Any drive-through time?
Yeah, there was definitely some drive-through time. Yeah. But what I really liked was being in the back.
Is the drive-through role like coveted, or do people like not want that?
I think it was coveted. I think you got maybe paid a little bit more for it. It was not something that they started you at, but I would say the stuff that's not guest facing was my favorite. Yeah.
Do you still eat McDonald's?
Every now and again, what I will have is like a Egg McMuffin or something like that, like the McDonald's like breakfast sandwiches. Yeah, if you're on a road trip somewhere.
So good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Final question. Yep. What's your perfect Saturday in Seattle?
Ooh.
Your perfect itinerary?
Yeah. Probably Discovery Park with Meredith and our dog, Lucy.
What kind of dog is Lucy?
Lucy is a golden retriever.
Wonderful.
Yeah. No, super sweet.
Good dogs.
Yeah. She's awesome. Maybe for a little walk. And then afterwards, a brunch, maybe at Westward or at Whale Winds on the patio where you can bring a dog. And just, really kind of make a meal of that and not be in a hurry. Probably go home for a nap afterwards, and then have a little putter around the house, and then back out for dinner in the evening. Right now, if it was this Saturday, I would say I would want to go to Lioness, which I know I'm picking all my own spots, but since Lioness is open in January, I've only been twice, and I feel, I want to get back there.
This is the new spot on Finney, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it's, I guess now it's been open like what, five months?
Yeah, newish.
4 months. Yeah. And I've been traveling a bunch, and, have not made it there as much as I'd like. So that's where I would go. And Meredith always teases me because I'm constantly saying like I'm not trying to have a late night. So I think it's dinner with some friends at Lioness, and we're back at home to sleep before 11. Yeah,
It's a good day.
Yeah, it's a great day.
A good evening.
Yeah.
And I didn't know you could take dogs to Westward on the.
Yeah. So if they're outside and they're well behaved, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think the health department loves that, but I think
that's a good tip.
Yeah, it's not they don't close your restaurant if you got a dog out there anyway.
Yeah. We won't tell people either that David lets some dogs into Caviste every now and then too. which I find very handy and convenient when I'm out on a little walk. And
pretty charming. I think, I bet you would find a lot of restaurants are okay with it as long as your dog isn't a menace. Yeah.
Well, my summer's not complete without a few nights out at Westward. It's just a spectacular spot to look back at downtown across the lake and enjoy some oysters.
Yeah, that's right. That sounds ideal.
Well, thanks for making time to come on Seattle City Makers, and great to learn more about what you all are up to downtown and to get to know you. And thanks for all that you've already brought to downtown, the food and beverage experiences, and they're phenomenal. And we look forward to the 3 that are coming in Pioneer Square.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jeremy. Love everything they are doing. He and Renee and Chad and that whole team in the restaurants they've got downtown and those in other neighborhoods across our city. And I can't wait to get into their creations at Railspur down in Pioneer Square. That is going to be a terrific experience in a beautiful renovated building by the great folks from Denver Urban Villages that are developing that mixed-use project. If you want to know more about that project, check out our conversation with John Berge, who was on our podcast last year. And get down to check out what Railspur's got going on. There's a number of retailers that are already open. The Westland Hotel there at First and King will be open, I think, later this year, and we'll have a rooftop bar and restaurant on that project as well. So a lot of great dining, food, entertainment, retail experiences coming to the Railspur project, and great to have Sea Creatures a part of that. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.